The bad headlines around Prince Harry are no longer limited to family drama, court cases, or awkward red carpet appearances. Now the pressure is reaching one of the few parts of his public identity that has usually been treated as untouchable: the Invictus Games. According to reporting discussed by Paula Froelich of News Nation, a petition has begun gathering attention from people who want Harry removed from his role around Invictus. It may not have the power to force immediate change, and it may be more of a public temperature check than a formal mechanism. But even the existence of such a petition is significant, because Invictus has long been the strongest pillar of Harry's post-roll image. For years, Invictus has functioned as the proof that Harry still has a purpose beyond grievance. When his media projects were criticized, Invictus gave him seriousness. When Spare caused outrage, Invictus gave him service. When his and Meghan's celebrity ventures looked thin, Invictus reminded the public of his military background and his connection to wounded veterans. But that is exactly why the new criticism matters so much. If veterans' spouses, or supporters of the military community are now questioning whether Harry should remain attached to the Games, then this is not just another social media backlash. It is a challenge to the one cause he cannot afford to lose. The complaint being made by critics is not that the Invictus Games themselves are unworthy.
I think a lot of people were really upset over not just Harry's nonsense of saying, I'm a target of a terror attack, but I'm going to Birmingham. So, of course,
which I can tell you is a very sketchy English city.
Yeah, but it's honestly like, okay, Harry, you're talking to actual soldiers who saw battle and they already have PTSD, you know? And a lot of people were really upset that Meghan is selling her outfits that she's worn to previous Invictus Games on one-off. They're also upset that it seems to to use one of Harry's favorite phrases, it seems to be a vehicle for them to whitewash their reputations. So people are very upset, and there is a petition that has...
Almost everyone in this discussion agrees that the athletes deserve respect, that wounded service members deserve support, and that sport can be a powerful part of recovery. The criticism is that Harry and Meghan have become too intertwined with the event, to the point where the cause risks being overshadowed by the couple's brand management. Instead of the Games being about veterans, critics say the public story too often becomes about Harry's speeches, Meghan's outfits, security disputes, their arrival, their absence, their relationship with the royal family, and their latest public relations narrative. That is a dangerous place for any charity or mission-led organization to be. The strongest charities are built around the cause, not the figurehead. Most people cannot name the head of the International Red Cross or the executive leadership of major cancer charities, and that is the point. The work matters more than the personality. Invictus, however, has become almost inseparable from Harry. Supporters might say that is because he helped create it and gave it global attention. Critics argue that the problem is exactly that. The public can no longer easily separate the Games from Harry's reputation, and Harry's reputation is now increasingly unstable. The petition has reportedly drawn comments from people connected to veterans, including family members of those who have served. That detail is important.
It should be. It's basically a public barometer of how people feel about him and how they feel about Invictus. And a lot of people are really just concerned that he and his wife Meghan are hijacking a cause for their own self-burnishment. And, you look at it and you can't say anything about veterans, right? You don't want to say anything about veterans. We want them all to do well. So Harry is basically hiding behind the veterans and using them to better his own reputation while actually not bettering many lives at all.
If the criticism were coming only from the usual anti-Sussex corner of the internet, it would be easy to dismiss as predictable hostility. But if veterans and their families are saying they feel used, then the issue becomes much harder to ignore. The Games exist for them. They are supposed to be the center. If some within that community now believe Harry is using their sacrifice as a shield for his own public image, Invictus has a serious reputational problem. One reason the anger has intensified is Harry's recent language around security. Critics were especially frustrated by the idea that he could present Birmingham as risky or imply that he remains the target of serious danger while speaking to people who have lived through actual combat, serious injury, trauma, and post-traumatic stress. The tone, they argue, can sound self-absorbed. Harry may genuinely feel unsafe, and his military service did create real threats in the past. But when the conversation is framed around his personal fear while he is addressing wounded soldiers and veterans, it can land badly. The people at Invictus are not props in Harry's security argument. They are the reason the event exists. Meghan's role has also become a major point of criticism. Commentators have argued that she has used past Invictus appearances as fashion moments, and that some outfits associated with those events have later been connected to commercial attention or resale discussion.
100%. Everything is. It's just they can't help themselves. They want to drive this narrative that they are just so charitable and they're so kind and so giving. But at the same time, I don't think either of them understand what hard work is. And Harry doesn't understand that you can't just set up a charity. It requires 60 to 80 hours work per person who works for that charity in order to set it up correctly. However, in his mind, because this is how his entire life has gone, he shows up, he smiles, he takes photos, everyone says how great he is, he shakes some hands, and then he leaves. And that to him is considered a good day of work.
And of course, his opening.
Whether every criticism is fair or not, the perception is damaging. If the public sees Meghan's presence at Invictus as another chapter in her personal brand, then the Games become a platform for Sussex visibility rather than a celebration of the competitors. That is exactly the kind of complaint that can alienate veterans and sponsors alike. Harry and Meghan's defenders would say this is unfair. They would argue that the couple bring enormous global attention to causes that might otherwise receive less media coverage. They would say Meghan's presence helps broaden the audience, that Harry's celebrity status attracts donors, and that the emotional power of the event is strengthened by his personal connection to service. Those arguments have weight. Invictus became internationally recognizable partly because of Harry, but celebrity attention is only useful when it lifts the mission. Once the celebrity becomes the story, the mission starts to pay the price. The comparison with Harry's other charitable problems makes this especially sensitive. Centobale, the charity Harry co-founded in memory of Princess Diana, recently became part of a public controversy involving Dr. Sophie Chanduka. In that dispute, Harry appeared to lose influence over a cause that had been deeply connected to his mother's legacy. Critics saw it as another example of Harry struggling with governance, accountability, and the reality that charities are not personal possessions. There are boards, strategy, sustainable funding, professional management, and sometimes leaders who will say no to famous founders. That point matters because charity work is not easy. There is a romantic idea that a famous person can simply attach their name to a good cause, appear at events, raise awareness, and call it service. But serious charity work is much harder than that. It involves constant fundraising, governance, audits, safeguarding, staff management, donor relations, long-term planning, and the patience to build something that lasts beyond a headline. Paula Froelich argued that Harry may not fully understand this. In her view, he has spent much of his life in a system where he shows up, smiles, shakes hands, gives a speech, receives praise, and leaves. That can look like work from the outside, but it is not the same as running an organization. This may be one of the deeper problems with Harry's entire post-royal life. He left the machinery that used to turn his appearances into impact inside the monarchy. Palace staff, advisors, security teams, press officers, charity professionals, and institutional networks created the structure around him. Harry could be the human face of a cause because the system handled much of the machinery outside royal life. He still wants the emotional reward of service, but he no longer has the same institutional support.
It always felt sorry for the spares. Like, oh, well, there's nothing they can do. They're just, let's make them feel better. Here's a shiny toy. You know, I mean, Invictus was created to keep Harry busy after the army. And, you know, William didn't get it because he was basically instructed by his grandmother every day. So he also got Charles, but he got his grandmother. And Harry didn't really get that. You know, listen, I have a hard time with sympathy because, you know, we've all fallen flat on our face at some point in our lives, and we've all had to pick up, dust off, and keep it moving. And he's never had to pick up, dust off. He's always just been like, back to me. So he seems like he'd be very tiresome to hang out with.
Of course, he made the fatal mistake of marrying someone that convinced him that he was a victim. He might have had a chip on his shoulder before Meghan, after it, an entire potato farm.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Well, I think
If he does not build professional systems around his projects, the work becomes fragile. That fragility now appears around Invictus. According to the discussion, there are concerns about sponsorship, staffing, and the enormous cost of staging the games. The Birmingham Invictus Games have reportedly received around £29 million from the British government, while Harry is expected to help bring in private and corporate funding to match or exceed that level. Paula Froelich claimed that only about £4 million had been raised so far from private individuals and anonymous corporate sources. If those figures are accurate, the gap is striking. The sponsorship question is especially troubling because major companies usually like public association with veterans' causes. Corporate donors often want their names attached to events that show civic responsibility, support for service members, and social good. If flagship sponsors are not lining up, critics argue that the Sussex brand may be part of the hesitation. No company wants to invest heavily in an event only to watch the headlines become about Harry and Meghan's latest drama, a petition against Harry, a security dispute, or questions about where the money is going. The cost comparison raised in the discussion is also sharp. Paula contrasted Invictus with the Warrior Games in the United States, which inspired Harry's project. She claimed that the Warrior Games involved more participants and operate at a far lower cost, with insurance, flights, hotels, and support provided more comprehensively. In contrast, she said Invictus costs tens of millions, while only around 500 competitors take part. Those claims require careful handling because budgets differ by country, scale, venue, security, broadcasting, ceremonies, and many other factors. But the broad question is legitimate. Why does Invictus cost so much? And how much of that spending directly benefits the athletes? That question becomes painful when individual cases are raised. Scott Snow, a Canadian veteran who competed in Dusseldorf, was mentioned as someone who was seriously injured and allegedly not properly supported afterward. According to the discussion, he faced financial hardship, medical problems, and uncertainty after sustaining an injury connected to his participation. If even part of that account is accurate, it is exactly the kind of story Invictus cannot afford. The games are supposed to honor and support wounded veterans, not leave them feeling abandoned after cameras move on. No one should leap from cost questions to accusations of corruption without evidence. That would be irresponsible. But it is fair to ask whether the enterprise has become bloated, inefficient, or overly focused on spectacle. If participants still face personal costs, while Harry and Meghan receive first-class treatment, luxury hotel arrangements, motorcades, and high-profile production value, critics will naturally ask what the priorities are.
Well, I think the veterans are really annoyed that they are being used for someone else's glory. You know, again, let's look at the Pat Tillman Award that Harry won, and I use that very loosely. He's won about, I think it's 7 awards in 6 years since he's come to America, which is astounding. And by winning, I mean, you know, got the PR people to shove him in. But you look at the Pat Tillman Award, and Pat Tillman was a former football player, and he gave up his life and his livelihood to join the Army after 9/11. He gave up money and fame for service. And when Harry was awarded the SB Award, the Pat Tillman Award, Pat Tillman's mother was furious. She was basically like, Harry's done the opposite. He gave up service for money and fame. So how does this compute? And a lot of veterans feel the exact same.
The optics become even worse when the event feels like a concert, a celebrity showcase, or a Sussex image repair exercise, rather than an athlete-centered competition. This is why some are now asking whether Invictus can continue in its current form. Paula suggested that Birmingham 2027 may be pushed through because too much has already been invested, but that serious conversations may follow about the future of the games and whether the model is sustainable. That does not mean Invictus is definitely ending. It means the organization may face a reckoning after Birmingham about money, governance, leadership, sponsor confidence, athlete support, and Harry's role. For Harry, that possibility is devastating. Invictus is not just another charity. It is central to his identity. Without Invictus, what is his public role? He is no longer a working royal. His media career has been uneven. His podcast and streaming deals have not produced the empire once promised. Spare brought money, but also deepened the family rift. His legal battles with the press are expensive and divisive. His public speaking value appears, according to critics, to have fallen dramatically from the enormous fees discussed after Brexit. If Invictus weakens, Harry loses the platform that still allows him to look like a man of service. That is why the phrase, "no Invictus, no Harry," is so striking. It may be exaggerated, but it captures something real.
Veteran who played in Dusseldorf, who was horrifically injured and not covered by any insurance policy. You would think that Invictus would have had that, but they don't. And a lot of other, you have to understand, only around 500 people compete in these games that cost 60 million. The Birmingham Invictus games, the British government gave 29 million pounds. Harry's supposed to match or exceed that with corporate and private donors. And he's only raised 4 million so far from private individuals and anonymous corporations, which is bizarre because most corporates really want to announce that they're so good. Look, we might pollute the earth, but look, we give to veterans, So it's very head scratching. In the States, we have...
Harry has tried to present himself as a philanthropist, a mental health advocate, a veteran champion, a media producer, a thought leader, and a global campaigner. But of all those identities, the veteran champion is the one that made the most sense. It connected to his military service, his emotional strengths, and the public affection he once enjoyed. If even that identity becomes contaminated by questions over ego, money, and Sussex branding, his post-royal life becomes much harder to define. The Pat Tillman Award controversy fits into the same problem. When Harry received the award, many critics were outraged, including Pat Tillman's mother, who publicly questioned why Harry had been chosen. The objection was not simply anti-Harry sentiment. Pat Tillman gave up fame and money to serve after September 11. Harry, critics argued, had moved in the opposite direction, leaving formal service and royal duty for fame, money, media deals, and celebrity status. That contrast made the award feel, to some, like another example of Harry being honored for symbolism rather than sacrifice. Awards have become part of the criticism around Harry in America. Since moving to the United States, he and Meghan have received a number of honors, often tied to service, courage, media, humanitarian work, or social impact. Their supporters see these as recognition.
So it might be a good idea, and of course we support veterans, but where's his money going to? Because it ain't going towards people getting prosthetic legs. It's not going to ramps on their homes for wheelchairs. It's not going for mental health. Scott Snow was dropped immediately after he got injured.
Well, it was an incredible piece that you wrote for News Nation about Scott Snow, which I found actually very upsetting because this is a guy, he's got, a family to provide for. He's not able to work. He's running out of money, and it's shocking to think that he sustained an injury whilst participating in Invictus and now faces bankruptcy, and he's still got operations to come. So fair play to you for drawing attention to that story.
Critics see them as public relations placements, the kind of awards famous people receive when teams lobby successfully and organizations want celebrity attendance. Whether that is fair in every case is less important than the perception. If Harry is seen as a professional award recipient rather than a genuine worker, the public becomes more skeptical each time he steps on a stage. There is also a broader character critique running through the discussion. Paula and Mark Dolan argued that Harry was never given proper boundaries, comparing him to his uncle Andrew, in the sense that both men were indulged as spares and protected from the consequences of their behavior. That is a harsh comparison, and the circumstances are not identical. But the underlying idea is that Harry grew up accustomed to rescue. When he made mistakes, palace machinery softened the landing. When he needed a role after the army, Invictus gave him purpose. When his image needed repair, the royal system gave him structured duty. Once that scaffolding was gone, the habits remained, but the protection did not. The Nazi uniform episode is often raised as an example of Harry's long-standing difficulty with accountability. In later years, Harry appeared to suggest that William and Catherine were involved in the decision or reaction around that costume, which critics saw as another example of him shifting blame.
Was absolutely going to stand by his side at Birmingham. You know, I've reported that it's become the Meghan and Harry games, not Harry's game. He's always insisted she come up ever since they've been together. He's really co-opted her in. He thinks that she is a huge powerhouse and win everyone over just like she did him, and is just an asset. Unfortunately, he won't listen to anyone who says differently, and she did not show up. She's claiming it was because of security, which is nonsense. It's absolute horse twaddle. The entire visit was pre-planned for at least a month, with her showing up to Invictus events, and they never got the security that they claimed they wanted. They had adequate security otherwise, but they threw their toys out of their pram and got upset. Now I can't go because of this. But she also, frankly...
The point is not to relitigate every mistake from his youth. It is to observe a pattern critics see again and again. Harry frames himself as acted upon rather than acting. He's misled, unsupported, endangered, betrayed, triggered, or trapped. Rarely does he simply say, "I chose this, I got it wrong, and I will change." The discussion of therapy goes to that same issue. Dr. Max Pemberton was referenced for arguing that Harry represents the failure of certain therapeutic cultures. People learn to describe their victimhood in great detail, but not necessarily to move beyond it. This is not a criticism of therapy itself. Good therapy can be life-changing. The concern is with a style of emotional language that validates every grievance but never challenges behavior. If Harry is surrounded by people who tell him he is always right, always wounded, and always owed, then therapy becomes another form of royal indulgence rather than a route to maturity. That is where Meghan's influence becomes controversial. Some commentators believe Meghan did not create Harry's grievances, but recognized and amplified them. Harry may already have felt like the spare, already have resented William, already have carried unresolved grief over Diana, and already have distrusted the press. Meghan, in this reading, gave those feelings a new vocabulary and a new target. She helped him interpret his entire life through victimhood, institutional cruelty, and personal liberation. But it would be too simple to blame Meghan for everything. Harry is an adult. His choices are his own. He chose the interviews, the memoir, the lawsuits, the attacks, the relocation, and the continuing public war. That distinction is important. Critics of Meghan often make her the mastermind behind every bad Sussex decision, but that can become a way of letting Harry escape accountability. Harry was a prince long before Meghan. People who met him during his younger, cheeky lad years have sometimes described him as entitled or difficult. Stories about his behavior toward women, journalists, or ordinary people existed before the royal wedding. If the public now sees a darker side of Harry, it may not be because Meghan transformed him completely. It may be because the palace once hid parts of him more effectively. The Hollywood dimension adds another layer. Meghan is often described as driven, ambitious, detailed, and controlling. Harry, by contrast, is described by critics as restless, unfocused, and unwilling to do consistent work. That difference may actually explain their arrangement Meghan pursues entertainment, lifestyle branding, media opportunities, and possible future books or business ventures. Harry acts as the royal figurehead, the humanitarian face, military veteran, and the emotional center of the brand. But if Harry's platforms collapse, Meghan's strategy becomes harder too, because her value remains tied to his title and royal identity. Some people continue to speculate about divorce, but Paula argued that this is unlikely unless Meghan had a more powerful replacement waiting. That is a cynical view, but it reflects how critics see the Sussex marriage, not only as romance, but as mutual branding. Harry gives Meghan royalty. Meghan gives Harry a sense of mission and emotional validation. Each needs the other, even if the partnership creates constant controversy. Harry may still appear deeply attached to Meghan, and she may still see him as essential to her public relevance. That makes the marriage durable, but not necessarily healthy for their public standing. The American reaction is crucial here. Americans often love comeback stories, but they prefer comeback stories built on visible work, humility, and authenticity. They can forgive failure if someone owns it and rebuilds. What they dislike is entitlement dressed as struggle. Meghan's brand asks Americans to see her as aspirational, self-made, authentic, and insightful. Critics respond that she married a prince, took a title, and then tried to position herself as a lifestyle authority without doing the slow work that earns that kind of trust.
On one thing, I think charity is an insanely hard business if it's run properly. And I think the problem with everything all the lists that you just put out is that Harry and Meghan thought it would just be easy. Harry thought, well, Meghan's got the smarts for Hollywood and she knows how to handle the press. And Meghan was like, I'm married to a prince and we can do anything with an HRH or a title or a whatnot. And, charities are very difficult, as Sophie Chandaka has showed us. And Harry just didn't understand. He was like, what do you mean? I gave $1 million. That should be fine. And she's like, no, we need continual year over year to make this sustainable. It's not just about a one-off gift. It's not just about somebody saying, okay, here and then bye. What about the next year? What about the year after that? This is about actually changing people's lives. And so therefore we have to be organized. And the issue with Invictus Birmingham, I had another story.
Harry faces a similar problem. He wants to be seen as a serious leader, but he often appears to want the status without the discipline. That is why the word grifter has stuck so powerfully in some corners of the public conversation. It is not only about money, it is about perceived mismatch between image and substance. Harry and Meghan present themselves as philanthropists, producers, campaigners, and entrepreneurs. But their critics see unfinished projects, collapsed deals, limited charitable output, expensive appearances, and constant narrative management. Archewell has faced scrutiny over its activity. Centre Ballet became a public mess. African Parks has been mired in serious allegations, while Harry remains connected to its leadership. Now, Invictus faces sponsor questions and a petition. The pattern is becoming hard for them to shake. To be fair, running charities is not easy. It is not the soft option. Paula herself pushed back on the idea that charity should be simple, noting that proper charitable work is demanding and complex. That is the point. If Harry and Meghan thought philanthropy would be easier than business, they misunderstood the field. Sustainable charity requires professionalism. It requires leaders who accept oversight, long-term funding plans.
A source said, after interviewing, if it's for Harry and Invictus, I'm going to have to say no because I have my own reputation to worry about. And the phone call was cut short after that. They tried again, cut short again. But you'll see who they hired. They weren't going to give anyone the traditional leave notice for 3 to 6 months or whatever, however ridiculously long you guys do it there. In the US, it's 2 weeks. But they were saying, no, we'll just pick up anyone. They ended up hiring someone for like 30, 50,000 pounds a year who's quite green. Their entire staff is quite green. They're understaffed. And then you had the person who had the most experience, Melanie Poole, OBE, quit after a series of, 6 months? This is a woman who's done charity for a living, and she understands her own reputation.
And the humility to let experts lead. Fame can open doors, but it cannot replace competence. The staffing concerns around Birmingham add to that impression. Paula claimed that Invictus Birmingham had struggled to secure senior marketing talent, with some experienced professionals reluctant to attach their reputations to Harry and the event. She suggested that the organisation ended up hiring less experienced staff on lower salaries and that the team was under-resourced. She also noted the departure of Melanie Poole, an experienced charity figure, after a relatively short period. Departures can happen for many reasons, and no single staffing change proves dysfunction. But when combined with funding concerns, sponsor hesitation, and public criticism, it contributes to the sense of instability. If Birmingham 2027 does go ahead, the organisers will need to deliver more than celebrity optics. They will need to show that athletes are supported, costs are justified, sponsors are confident, and the event is not simply a platform for Harry and Meghan. That may require Harry to step back from the centre rather than push further into it. The Games may actually benefit if the public sees more competitors, more families, more recovery stories, more sporting achievement, and less Sussex choreography. In other words, Invictus may survive by becoming less about Harry. Whether Harry could accept that is another question. The original purpose of Invictus may have been noble, but it also gave Harry something personally vital. It gave him a role after the army. It turned his military experience into a global platform. It allowed him to be admired without having to be heir. It gave him something William did not have in quite the same way. If Invictus now needs distance from Harry to protect itself, that would be emotionally brutal. It would mean the cause he used to define himself has outgrown the benefit of his presence. Sponsors will be watching closely. They do not want controversy that distracts from their charitable investment. Governments will be watching too, especially if public money is involved. Veterans groups will want assurance that competitors are properly insured, supported, and prioritized. The media will keep asking why costs are high, who pays for what, and whether Harry and Meghan's expenses are appropriate. Once those questions begin, they rarely disappear. Transparency becomes essential. That transparency would need to be more than a glossy annual report or a few reassuring talking points. It would mean clear explanations of how public money is spent, how corporate donations are allocated, what support athletes receive before and after competition, and what safeguards exist when participants are injured.
Most definitely. And if you look at Invictus, it is central to Harry's brand, Paula, and central to his identity. You could go as far as to say, no Invictus, no Harry.
I think, yeah, I can see how you would say that. Yes, in his mind, 100%. But I do think, listen, I have heard from very good sources that it may be postponed. I do believe they're going to white knuckle Invictus Games, but then I have heard that after that, there's going to be big coming to Jesus talks about how they go forward and if they go forward.
It would also mean answering the uncomfortable question of whether the Games have grown too expensive for their own mission. A veterans sporting event can be inspiring without becoming a luxury production. In fact, a leaner and more athlete-centered model might be more powerful because it would make the values of resilience and service feel less buried under celebrity staging. Board independence is another issue that cannot be avoided forever. If Harry's friends and allies dominate the structure around Invictus, critics will continue to say the organisation is too personally tied to him. A cause of this scale needs people who can challenge the founder, not simply protect him. It needs trustees and executives who are willing to say when an appearance is unhelpful, when a speech is too political, when Meghan's presence risks overshadowing competitors, or when spending choices are difficult to justify. A serious charity cannot run on deference. It has to run on accountability. That is also why the centre bail controversy matters as a warning. When a founder treats a charity like an extension of personal identity, any challenge can feel like betrayal. But charities do not belong emotionally to their founders, they belong morally to the people they serve. If Invictus is truly about veterans, then veterans should be able to question Harry's role without being treated as disloyal or ungrateful. Their concerns should be heard precisely because they are the community the games claim to honor. The best future for Invictus might therefore involve a quieter Harry. Not an absent Harry necessarily, but a less central one. He could still raise awareness, greet competitors, and speak about service. But the games need to show that they have depth beyond him. They need veteran voices at the front, independent leadership in the boardroom, and a funding model that does not depend on the Sussex media cycle. That kind of reset would be difficult, but it could protect the mission from becoming trapped inside Harry's personal reputation. The Sussex's broader habit of turning every situation into leverage also makes Invictus vulnerable. They have been accused of weaponizing security to obtain armed protection, weaponizing their children to secure meetings with King Charles, and weaponizing royal proximity to support commercial projects. Those are severe criticisms, and they should be understood as commentary rather than proven fact. But the perception is powerful. If people begin to believe that Invictus is another lever, another shield, another image repair platform, the brand damage spreads from Harry to the games themselves. That would be deeply unfair to the athletes. The competitors did not choose to be part of Sussex drama. They are there because sport gives them focus, recovery, community, and visibility after injury or trauma.
Flagship donor, Boeing, bowed out. They don't have a big company saying, here's our name on this event. We've paid X millions for it. Of course, it's all a tax write-off, so they need to give those millions away. Anyway, the problem is the Sussex brand has become so intertwined with Invictus, and it's just been tarnished. It's also because of the financial questions coming up. People do have to look at their board and say, okay, we gave this money to Invictus, and for some reason it cost 60 million, whereas a similar event in the States costs $2 to $3 million, not pounds. So
their families deserve pride without watching the headlines turn into another referendum on Meghan's outfits or Harry's court cases. If Invictus is to remain credible, it must recenter those people urgently. There is still a way for Harry to help. He could become less defensive, more transparent, and more disciplined. He could make clear that Invictus is not about him, not about Meghan, not about royal drama, and not about security arguments. He could use his platform to raise money quietly, bring in professionals, strengthen athlete support, and then step back during the event so the competitors take the spotlight. That would be the mature move. It would also be the most difficult move for someone whose entire public life has become tied to being seen, heard, and emotionally understood. The uncomfortable possibility is that Harry does not know how to work without a spotlight. Inside the royal family, the spotlight was managed for him. Outside it, he has had to chase it. Invictus sits between those two worlds. It was born with palace support and military credibility, but now it exists in the Sussex media ecosystem. The question is whether it can escape that ecosystem before the damage becomes permanent. Birmingham 2027 may therefore be a turning point. If it succeeds, if funding is stabilized, if athletes are supported, and if Harry allows the games to breathe without turning them into a Sussex showcase, Invictus could recover. If it becomes another carousel of Meghan speculation, security arguments, luxury logistics, sponsor anxiety, and personal branding, the reform will grow louder. A petition today may be symbolic. A sponsor withdrawal tomorrow would be practical. A governance crisis after that would be existential. This is the larger lesson of Harry's post-royal life. Causes cannot simply be attached to celebrity and expected to thrive. The public may be drawn in by fame at first, but over time people ask, what is actually being delivered? Are veterans being helped? Are funds being used well? Are participants protected? Are staff competent? Is the organization bigger than its founder? If the answer is unclear, admiration turns into suspicion. Harry once had the rare ability to make people feel warmly toward a cause because they felt warmly toward him. That gift is fading. The goodwill he inherited from Diana, from his military service, and from his years as the popular younger prince has been spent down through years of conflict. Some people still admire him. Some still believe he was brave to leave. Some still see him as wounded and sincere. But many others now see entitlement, contradiction, and a man who never fully accepted the consequences of his choices. Invictus cannot rely forever on the old Harry when the public is now judging the new one. The petition may not remove him.
You know, look at a lot of these participants have to pay for themselves to go. They have to pay for their hotel room, their whatnot. Now, Harry and Meghan get their flights, they get their 5-star hotel, and as we saw in Vancouver, they also got a ride, a limo basically, from the front door of their hotel across the street to the games. So that's not cheap either, is it? You know, it's very frustrating, not to mention Vancouver games. Most people showed up just to see Katy Perry. So it's become really a concert event, not about the Warriors. And the actual attendance was very low, minimal even.
Now, it's been reported that within that marriage, Harry and Meghan,
It may not even reach the boardroom in a formal way, but as a signal, it should alarm him. It says that even within the world most sympathetic to his service identity, patience is thinning. It says that veterans do not want to be background scenery for a prince's reputation. It says that sponsors and organizers cannot assume Harry's name is always an asset. And it says that a charity's moral authority can be damaged when its figurehead becomes too controversial. For Meghan, the warning is similar. If she attends Invictus, she must understand the moment. It cannot be a fashion parade, a brand opportunity, or a stage for Duchess imagery. If she stays away, the absence cannot become another briefing war about security, sadness, or humiliation. Either way, the event has to belong to the athletes. Anything else will feed the petition's argument. For Harry, the challenge is more personal. He must decide whether he truly serves Invictus or whether Invictus serves him. Those two things may once have overlapped naturally. Now they may be pulling apart. If he truly cares about the games, he should be willing to let professionals lead, let veterans speak, let donors ask hard questions, and let his own role become smaller if that protects the mission. If he cannot do that, then the critics asking for him to step aside will only grow louder. The tragedy is that Invictus should have been the easiest part of Harry's life to defend. It was the good work. It was the proof of purpose. It was the thing even many critics hesitated to attack, because the veterans deserved better than political or royal sniping. But Harry and Meghan have dragged so much controversy into their orbit that even this cause is now being questioned. That is not the fault of the athletes. It is the consequence of years in which the Sussex brand became louder than the work. So the latest petition is not just a nuisance, it is a warning flare. It tells Harry that he cannot assume the Invictus shield will protect him forever. It tells sponsors that public sentiment is shifting. It tells the board that governance and transparency matter. It tells Meghan that her presence must be handled with extreme care. And above all, it tells everyone connected to the games that the mission has to be rescued from the spectacle. If Invictus survives this moment, it will be because it remembers what it was created to do. It was created to honor wounded, injured, and sick service members. It was created to give competitors a stage for courage, recovery, and community. It was not created to repair a prince's reputation, sell a royal adjacent lifestyle, or keep a celebrity couple in the news. The athletes are the story. The veterans are the story. Their families are the story. If Harry wants to remain part of that story, he may need to stop acting like he is the headline. That is the real crisis now facing Prince Harry. Not merely whether a petition succeeds, not merely whether Birmingham can raise enough money, and not merely whether Meghan attends the next ceremony. The crisis is whether one of the last respected parts of his public life can still survive his own brand. Invictus gave Harry purpose when he needed it most. Now, Harry may need to prove that he can protect Invictus from becoming just another casualty of the Sussex drama.
Petition. And it's just worth reminding our viewers, isn't it, that it's not normal for the figurehead of a charity to have a petition seeking their removal. This is not normal. Welcome to Harry World.
I would like, right now, just for fun, who's the head of the Red Cross, International Red Cross? Who's the head of Susan B. Komen breast cancer? Who is... I would like for you to name someone who is the head of a charity that is not named after them.
Yeah.
And very few people can, because it's really about the cause. It's not about the person.
Brilliantly put. Paula Froelich is the star of